Hello, 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 everybody. It is your boy, Rev Phoenix Coffin-Williams, and I am coming to you today from the beautiful, wonderful, hoppin' and poppin' Buffalo, New York. It's a little cold here right now for certain. However, the weather is doing this thing where it goes back and forth in between being very nice, very unreasonable, and moderately unreasonable. So that's going on here in Buffalo right now. But I will say it's nice out. It's good to see the days getting longer after our Ostara celebration. It's good to see the temperature climbing up there a little bit. Um, it's good to see more people out and about. That's always a good time. I'm so definitely glad to see the changes that are happening in the community in the weather. Um, I do also have a guest here with me today. It is my sister from a different mister. I'm gonna go ahead and refer to her as the Most Reverend Alyssa. Hi, Carell.
Hi,
What's going on? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing pretty decently, wrapping up a nice little Friday, nice little work day.
Nice.
What's the weather like where you at?
It is cloudy, but fine. Not like super dreary like it was last week.
Yeah, cloudy but fine. I was just remarking that like it's noticeable the change in the season since Ostara, but the weather keeps alternating between being like very nice, being really unreasonable, and being moderately unreasonable. So like we had a 72-degree day, but then it's been like in the 33s, 34s, 38s, which feels like an insult.
Yeah, it has been kind of up and down. I feel that.
Right off the cuff, before we get into what we're going to be talking about today, I do want to say hello to Kayleen and to Black Crystal, who are both watching. Thank you for joining from Australia and all that jazz.
Good
Also,
morning.
if you want to, you could go ahead and head over to Witch School and get in those studies. You could have a temple in Australia. We had one there back in the day. But I think that the ones who are responsible for that temple have since crossed over into the whole court of the ancestors. So if you're interested in that, like, go ahead and be about that life. Hey, Mary Cavalcante, what's going on? How you doing? Good to see you, man.
Hi, Mary.
Today, Lady Alyssa and myself thought that we would take a crack at discussing some ethics and some responsibilities as it relates to being Corellian clergy or a part of the Corellian clergyhood or priesthood. Um, I absolutely believe for certain that an ongoing discussion about ethics is essential for a growing clergyhood, a growing organization, a growing community. Attention to the right way and the wrong way to resolve issues and carry on is essential. Um, what do you think, Lady Alyssa? Like, how essential are ethics?
I think it should be a backbone always. Um, I think we, especially as leadership, as clergy, have a duty to be ethical in our dealings with people, um, and I, I don't know. It's there's I feel like there's an expectation of comportment that comes with being a member of clergy. There's an expectation that you are somebody that others can look up to and take cues from and go to for services and advice and counsel. Um, and ethics just plays such a huge role in all of that as like an underlying backbone.
I agree. One of the things that I do like to talk about during these conversations is the difference between morals and ethics. The way that I was taught, the way that I've learned is that morals are deeply personal things. Those are the things that we organize our life and our behaviors by, and we organize our interactions by what our personal morals are. The ethics are the social, codified kind of norms and behaviors that are acceptable or not acceptable, regardless of personal morals. So there's, some behaviors that could be ethical, but they might be against my personal morals. There might be behaviors or things that you can do that are legal, but they are tantamount. If is that the right tantamount? They are
Mhm.
tantamount to like that personal system or like that personal compass that guides you in your life. So there is a difference in the way that I've learned it between ethics and morals. And when it comes down to it, the ethics are the things that our society or that our social realm will hold us responsible for, and our morals are what our higher selves, our gods, goddesses, and spirit guides are going to hold us accountable to.
Yeah, and it's such an important distinction too, um, because um, you know morality is such a scale. I feel like for so many people, but ethics, like you said, it's a societal expectation of what is okay. I think.
Or
I had to take an ethics class every couple years to maintain my massage licensure, because it's important for the healthcare field too. Obviously, issues of bodily autonomy and consent, and um, using your knowledge ethically is important also. I feel like, and important for clergy too. If you're asked a question and you don't know the answer, the right thing to do is to say that you don't know the answer.
absolutely. I don't know is absolutely like an ethical response.
Hmm.
Also, just wanted to check back in with the chat. I want to say hello to Reverend Ed Hubbard and hello to Jade Rising and hello to Gaia Thrift. Thank y'all for tuning in on this episode. And Kayleen, I'm super proud of you for starting that personal shrine. Keep at it. Um,
Yeah.
right now, this conversation that we're having right now about ethics is actually one of the conversations that is had in our third degree text and the opening chapters. And it will go a long way for helping you understand ethical decision making when you are in charge of a structure like a shrine or a temple or a proto temple or what have you. Which leads me to my next point. What constitutes ethical decision making? Like, what do you have to do each and every time you are faced with a quote unquote ethical dilemma to make sure that you are participating in ethical decision making? Like, do you have a personal process?
Oh, it's a good question. So just to get it straight in my head, so you're asking if I have a personal process for when an ethical quandary comes my way.
Yep,
So, it's hard for me without an example, I guess. Um, so I would say that there is more of a process for a moral issue than for an ethical issue. I feel like ethical issues are usually fairly in your face. It's about greater pictures, human rights, and um, the things that we tell people, the things that we do with people. For example, as clergy members, I think we have to be really careful with relationships, um, because is it ethical for a high priest or a high priestess to be involved with somebody who is a new member of their group or a new member of the
Mhm.
clergy.
Or
Um,
even, is it ethical for a supposed high priest or high priestess to suggest that any of their members engage in any kind of sexual interactions with each other, or like trying to overstep in those kind of relationships? Just as something that I've heard, have had happen. Like, yeah, it's a thing.
yeah. Um, that's Abuse is a large problem in most religions, I would say, including paganism. Obviously Christianity is, um, and there comes also the ethical duty of other clergy and leadership to hold peers accountable
Oh, for sure.
to our ethics.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure.
Because that's part of the problem with the Catholic Church is that they don't hold each other accountable.
That's the problem with the patriarchy in general. People in power do not hold other people in power responsible for the crappy things that they do with said power. And I do think that ethics can function to protect people who are marginalized,
Hmm.
even though what I am most often used to seeing are people using ethics to, uh, what do you call it? Play close to the chest, like literally. To, what do you call it when you do things literally to get what you want? Um, or when you use the law to, um, like, get something in a nefarious way, but it's completely legal. Like, there's a
Oh,
phrase for
the
that.
loopholes.
Yes, yes. Like a lot of times, like I see people use legal loopholes to for them to get what they want, and they're like, "Hey, like this isn't like the best way, but I got what I want. It's legal. We used this code of ethics to help us get what we want, even though like the wake of pain or hurt or misery is there. The ethics were still attuned to or attended to." I have an example. Let's say that you are hosting a community ritual for Beltane,
Hmm.
and a few people have showed up, and one of them has a restraining order against someone else who is showed up for the public ritual.
Hmm.
What's the ethical thing to do there?
It's the ethical thing to do there.
Nobody's causing a problem. There's no shouting. But the one with the restraining order is like, hey, like I do have a restraining order against this person, and like it's a problem for us to be in the same space at the same time.
Wow, that's a good ethical quandary that a clergy member would face. So let's break it down here. Um, you're at a public event, right? Um, Obviously, if there's a restraining order, that person is very capable of calling the police and having the other person removed. You
Hmm.
don't want that,
Hmm.
if possible. Um, so I feel like, so isn't it technically it's the person who's being restrained against is their responsibility to just leave.
Once they notice that the person that they have beef with is in the area, usually it's their responsibility to get on out of there.
Yep.
And so that actually would probably be the route that I took. I'm like, hey, it's come to my attention that like you have conflict with someone who's already here, and
Yeah.
like the law says that you got to leave when they're present. So I know it sucks as a situation. If you want to, we can set up an alternative way for you to have ritual or have celebration. But unfortunately, like you can't say at this particular event. I know you weren't causing problems. I know it wasn't your intention. However, like if the law ends up having to show up because there is beef, they're gonna take you away anyway. So we're just gonna snip that right in the bud. Can you come to a
Hmm. Hmm. That's really the only thing you can do.
different? Hmm. All right, so we are about halfway through. I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors. So let's see if we can go ahead and shout out our new Equinox sponsors. All right. Thank you, Equinox, for sponsoring Midday with Reverend Don. We and our uncle appreciates it, we know. But back to the topic at hand. We talk about ethics. Um, Ethical consideration. You are hosting a retreat
Hmm.
for families who want to deepen their family practice of the craft. And so there's parents there are children there's families, you're talking about the goddess, talking about God, talking about ancestors, talking about practices that you can do as a family. And as the weekend retreat progresses, you notice that one particular family is a little bit more rambunctious than a bunch of the other ones. And the issue with this family escalates, and you notice that one of the parents actually strikes a child who is consistently misbehaving and is consistently problematic for the whole group. Well, you do witness the strike, and you are a member of the clergy. What is the ethical thing that has to happen?
You mandatory reporter.
Hmm.
Yep, you report that
Hmm.
immediately.
Hmm. As a Corellian, no matter what state or country you're in, if you have a place to call that reports abuse and maltreatment of children, if you see a strike, you got to report a strike. The thing that I do is I approach people and I'm like, hey, just so you know, this is who I am. This is what I have to do based on what I have just seen. Would you like to be a part of the process? As in, would you like to be on speakerphone when I make the phone call? And a lot of times that does disarm a bunch of people and it helps them recognize, you know what? The situation has gotten or remains really far out of hand and I do need some help. Because, like, most of the time, people do not want to be striking their children.
Mm-mm.
It takes a bit of time, for people to like unlearn that. Because, like, a lot of times people have had parents who have struck them and they're like, hey, I turned out just great. And I'm like, yeah, you go to work every day, you got a family, but like you also hit your kids. And you seem to have forgotten what it was like to have a caregiver strike you. But back in the day when your parents were doing that, you felt lost, hopeless, ashamed, guilty, unwanted, unloved, rejected. So you think you came out okay, but actually what happened is you grew up thinking it was okay to hit children.
Mm-hmm.
It's a generational curse, and it does require an intervention. And the law says that mandated reporters have to respond in a certain way. Us as clergy are more than welcome to follow up after that in a way that is consistent with our beliefs. Hey, I have to make this phone call, but like maybe you and your family should come, next week or next month, and we can talk about a plan for helping you manage your anger, manage your frustration, or develop some healthier communication styles between you and your children,
Mm-hmm.
or help find a service that can do these kinds of things. Those are the two most common ones that I either have had to deal with or they come up very frequently in training efforts. The other one is substance abuse community members and their desire to hang out with you and drink or use substances with you in a social context, because like it's a part of your practice. You use ale at rituals. However, you know that there's someone who's in recovery coming and they're wanting to participate in the use of substances, even though they recently just got their 30-day chip, they just got their 90-day chip, they just got their 10-year chip, what have you. Either way, they want to participate in the part of the service that actually represents a problem in their life. What position do you take on knowingly allowing members to participate in things that will enable harm to them?
So that one's hard because that's like you're standing in the way of someone's autonomy, but also as a clergy member, if you know this person has struggles, um, so I think personally, if I had a member of my group that I knew had that sort of struggle, I would not have substances being a part of the ritual to begin with.
Hmm. Just accounting for it ahead of time. No
Mhm.
substances means it's okay for people who are in recovery from substances, and it's okay for any children or teens who might be showing up to participate anyway. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
So I like what Kai said in the chat about our previous scenario at the retreat. That as clergy, it'd be completely appropriate to intervene before that strike ever occurred. If you noticed that that family was struggling, and say, "Hey, is there any, do you guys want to sit down over here? Can we, do a one-on-one with this family?"
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
appropriate.
And Reverend Kai, thank you for that, because a lot of times it's true. Even if we're not particularly experts at certain things, we can look at a situation externally and be like, that's probably going to escalate.
Hmm.
Or it doesn't seem like those folks are being as effective with each other. Also, adding to the fact that, like, overcoming family difficulties on the road to improve spirituality was like the nature of that supposed retreat. Like, yeah, we can expect to see those kinds of things and have a plan in place beforehand, before the strike even occurs. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us, Reverend Kai. Again, also, thank you for joining us, Leo. Thank you for joining us, Swak Fan.
So I have one for you because we
Uh-huh.
talked about it a little bit. So, say you, as a member of the high priesthood, there's a few different temples in your area, you have a lot of people in your area. You know another member of the high priesthood, and they come to a community ritual, and they are getting very close with one of the dedicants that we just initiated last week, and the two of them are laughing, and they're both consenting adults, and they're going back and forth, and they are getting close, and you know get to the point where they start talking about that they are dating or in some sort of relationship. What's your response to that?
Mm-hmm. I have uh, two conversations. One with the member of the high priesthood and the newly initiated dedicant at the same time. And that conversation is on power dynamics, because the newly dedicated initiate will need to understand that it's not appropriate for anyone who outranks them to be approaching them for this kind of relationship, because the power dynamic will always be out of balance.
Hmm.
That conversation is had with both of them. The second conversation is a reminder and a warning to the member of the high priesthood that that kind of relationship is not appropriate, although you are both consenting adults. If you feel this is a soulmate situation, then you understand that you could wait for them to be at equal with you before you made your advance, and everything would be cool and copacetic. The other thing that I would want to warn them of is that, like, the potential for this to be observed by other people and to be found problematic by other people in and out of other circles is something that they will also have to be aware of. Because as a member of the high priesthood, even the appearance of impropriety is unacceptable.
It's true.
It can seem hard in the moment, like, what is the right thing to do when it comes to these ethical dilemmas? But the process that I think of is, one, don't keep it a secret. If it's scary, if it's different, if it's new, if it's out of your wheelhouse, or if it's out of your scope, seek additional support from another member of clergy or someone else who's trusted. Um, have someone in your phone who is like a decent ethical advisor. And this could be someone that like you met at a wellness fair where you were, just doing stuff where you were talking about magical approaches to wellness and you ran into some social workers or some therapists or whatever. You're like, hey, I am a reverend, I am a witch, I am a this, I am a that. And I'm looking to make sure that my network is full of ethical people so that I can bounce ethical considerations off of them. Having someone, anyone, like I have you, Lady Alyssa, I have the First Elder, I have Jason, I have my own therapist, I have groups of other healthcare professionals where I can be like, at any moment, I can be like, hey, these XYZ things are happening in session. Like, what's the most appropriate way to move forward to make sure that like healthcare is maintained, to make sure dignity is maintained, and then make sure that like everything is copacetic. So talking to people on your team who will guide you um, in uncertain situations is definitely like the number one thing to do. Like I will always come to you, Lady Alyssa, like, so what do you think about this? Like, why am I like this?
Why am I like this? It's
Oh,
true.
I
It's true. Feedback.
and so work with other people. And then the other thing is when it comes to ethical dilemmas and considerations, don't keep them secret. Just talk about them regularly. Normalize being like, hey, I needed some feedback on this issue. This is how I ended up resolving it. The
Mhm.
other thing is a lot of times situations can be resolved with win-win situations, meaning that everyone involved can leave a winner. And that is the best way to resolve an ethical dilemma by moving in that kind of direction. Um, and there are some situations where folks are not amenable to win-win situations. And in that case, the ones who don't want to collaborate appropriately can walk away the losers. We got about 3 minutes left. I do want to highlight our last sponsor, and that is going to be Reverend Don's
Ready to unlock
Metaphysical
the
and
secrets
Magical
of the
Auction.
universe? Join me, Reverend Don Lewis, for my metaphysical and magic auctions at Gaia Thrift at whatnot.com. Discover fascinating artifacts, mystical crystals, and rare and unusual books that could change your life. Don't miss this chance to bring a little magic into your world. Reverend Don's Metaphysical and Magic Auctions, where the extraordinary can become yours.
All right. Thank you, Reverend Don's Magic and Metaphysical Auction, for being a sponsor. And if you would like to be a sponsor and have your advertisement up on the vlog, hit me up and I will gather that information. I will most likely go to Mary Hawk and Uncle Don to figure out how that can happen. But if you do want your stuff displayed on there, I will definitely pass that information forward so we can make that happen. But again, thank you to our sponsors. Thank you, Mary Cavalcante, for being here. You have a great weekend also. Thank you, Kayleen, for being here from Australia. I'm glad that this was interesting for you, and hopefully you continue to follow up on ethics because like they will continue to be important. Slack fan, you had some really important feedback in the chat as well. A lot of parents don't realize that their children have ADHD or some kind of neurodivergence, and they do believe that their children are misbehaving, which is why it's not appropriate to lead with the striking or the hitting when some other alternative skill can be taught to them. You are absolutely legit on that, and I'm glad that you brought that up.
Mhm.
Do you have any last minute things that you would like to share as we wrap up this Friday, Lady Alyssa?
No, I just going back to like the core of ethics and our responsibility as clergy members to ourselves, to each other, and to our tradition. I think it's a multi-level thing that we always have to have in the backs of our minds. Are you comporting yourself like a clergy member? Are you being ethical? Are you following your morals?
That's a fact. That's a
Mhm.
fact. And one way to kind of answer that question for yourself is, are you okay with everyone knowing what you are currently doing or saying or believing?
Mhm.
All right, it is now that time. We are out of time for today. Of course, thank you so much, sis, for being here with me. I love your
Of course.
support. Thank you to Uncle Don. Thank you to Mary Hawk, of course, who assisted. Even though y'all don't know how, I know how she assisted, and I am grateful. Thank you to everyone who was here and who supported the conversation. I will be back next Friday, same time, same station, and I'm probably going to try to get my sister to come back with me too.
Phoenix Fridays.
Talk to y'all later and have a very blessed weekend.
Blessed be.